Hi, I'm Malcolm Clifford. I work with Jaywing, a marketing agency in fintech in Leeds. I do a lot of integration of AI, agentic technology across the group and working with clients doing that as well.
Hello, I'm Crispin. I'm the CEO of the Coders Guild. We are a digital skills training provider. These days that is very much an AI skills training provider. I had a longish career in tech before I moved into training. 10 years ago, I led the R&D to create the Level 4 Software Developer Apprenticeship. Last year, I led the R&D for the Level 4 AI and Automation Apprenticeship, and a busybody around with things like inclusion and social mobility, so I'm kind of both sides of the chat.
I'm Victoria Tomlinson, founder and chief exec of Next Up. I start my introduction by saying I'm 70 because it's relevant to everything we're doing. Keeping it, when you've got a long career, you have to keep it quite short. So I'm going to say that we particularly help people over 50 to use their skills in new ways. In many ways, Andy, you were a classic example of I had a job, now I've got a bit of a job. A lot of people, we all know we're living 20 to 30 years longer, and people are struggling to know what do they do with those extra 20 to 30 years. There's no easy career path there. On the AI, I've just written a book, Expiry Date Never, that's coming out with Pearson in September. I went to find my youngster to write it with me, 54, and we're looking at AI and the potential of that. We're also looking at developing a tool to help capture the tacit knowledge of the 50-plus generation as they retire. I think it's a big issue for lots of people that people are massively retiring now, and they're carrying with them in construction and all sorts of industries.
Hi everybody, I'm Mel Kanarek. I'm a founder and director of Sheffield Digital, which is the Association for the Digital Industries in Sheffield and South Yorkshire. And I'm also director of Sheffield Technology Parks, which is just down the road there and which hosts an incubator for technology companies. I've got a very long career in the technology industry. I won't tell you how many years. But during that time, I've worked in everything from working with small businesses to help them grow, helping US businesses find their way into the UK market, and working in the skills and education side of things, looking particularly at digital skills.
And hi everybody, I'm Rob Hamilton. I'm from the Northeast and really delighted to be here in a not a competitive region, but actually another region that we work with really closely. Absolutely endorse those words Andy said about the importance of working together and learning together. At the Combined Authority in the Northeast, I lead on innovation and strategy, including the AI growth zone. Recently I've been working with a large number of businesses and universities and others to think about how we make sure that delivers tangible benefits for residents.
If we strip away all the hype, because everybody's talking about AI, what you're doing with AI in your business, we take all that away, where is it actually delivering productivity gains today? Can we actually identify, really good user cases of where it's being implemented and really making some changes?
Where I see the biggest changes are, I think, in the technology teams, the development teams, where increasingly we're seeing one developer having a team of effectively agents that are doing development for them, or code assistants and whatever it is. And that's quite a mature area of AI, where the code assistants have been around for quite a while. And I think the productivity, you can see, anecdotally, sort of 30 to 50% more efficient the way they're operating. I think we've got a challenge in that to say, how do you get the full team working at that speed? Because I think there's people at the start that are doing that. So it's a case of rolling that out. I think that's the most obvious use case. We've tried to go really heavy with enterprise to bring AI in within our environment, so it's working within our company walls and using it in that way. And that gives you a lot more opportunities to do it. I think one of the dangers is when you just use it as an assistant or a sort of bottom-up thing where people are using ChatGPT or on the outside and bringing it into processes. And I don't think you really see the benefits that way. You get a little bit of help, but perhaps not the benefits you really realise. I think you need to be properly enterprise invested in it, understand what the technology can do and what it does, and have the initiatives to take that forward. So you have to go full into it, not just kind of play with it on the edges, I think.
I think it was Charlie who talked earlier about how it's people, process, and then technology. And what you see every time a new technology comes along is people dive in and start using it without addressing the people aspect and the process aspect, and then they don't see the gains that they want. They see that they've invested a load of money and they can't see the return on that investment. So because everything is moving so fast now, because AI is moving so fast, we're going to see people jumping in even faster and faster. And where the productivity gains are really going to come from is when people start by looking at, this is my business, this is the problems that it's got, these are the people in my business, what are they trying to do, what problems do they have? These are our processes. Now, looking at that, where might we apply AI technology to best benefit? And then also, as Charlie said, start small, do something, test it, refine it, and then look at the next thing and the next thing. I sound like I'm an old person here, but every time new technology comes along, everyone goes, this is going to change everything, this is going to change the world, this is going to change productivity, we're all going to be working 3-day weeks, all that kind of thing. It doesn't happen, and the reason those things don't happen is because of the way we're looking at applying that technology in our businesses and in our organizations.
Can I just sort of add to that? And we've heard lots of statistics today, and I'm just going to chuck a couple more at you as well. So I think it was that 50% of BCC members are adopting AI. But I think if you look across the widest wave of businesses and include micro and smaller businesses, it's less than 1 in 6. And of those businesses, less than 10% are actually seeing an impact in terms of their bottom line. But we do know that when AI is being adopted, a large proportion, over 50% of employees report productivity gains. So it does feel like we're very much at the cusp of the curve and at the beginning of a revolution. So in terms of your question, so obviously my colleagues on the panel are more expert in specific use cases, but what I find is that the gains are greatest if work is highly digitized or there's large amounts of text, if there's repetition, if businesses and their operations are rules-based and relatively predictable. And obviously you can turn some of those things on their head and to say it's much harder to adopt AI if you don't have some of those features, if you don't have the buy-in from senior management. If the approach from business owners is about we need an AI strategy rather than being really clear why they need an AI strategy, or if indeed they do need an AI strategy.
I would pick up on that. And I think one of the biggest problems we've got is that we haven't got leadership. I was very early into social media, and I could never persuade leadership teams to look at the advantages or the risks, frankly, that they were sitting on that they had no idea about. I'm going back some years ago now. And I think we've got the same problem now, where actually corporates are getting rid of the 50-plus generation in sways. We've never needed that experience head on AI more than ever. I think where we're seeing, we run workshops for professional firms, for partners in professional firms. They are spending millions on AI, but I'm not really seeing this whole enterprise going in there. And again, they're allowing people to sort of look up things, look up precedents and all the rest of it, but not really using it strategically. And I think where we got our co-author, my co-author in the book, she's got an AI business, and they're now going into schools, and I think where they're getting really fantastic returns is personalization, and I think we haven't really talked about that at all, but looking at learning styles of students and then personalizing learning for those individuals, and I think there's huge potential there, well, presumably for learning for universities as well, but particularly for schools that are struggling so much with cash. This could transform them.
There's a lot of people who are just picking up free accounts on their work machines, and they're just experimenting with AI and doing what they feel is right, and maybe sharing really important, like, I'm just going to put in the corporate accounts for the business and see what report I can pull, and with that really understanding regulations, decision making. It's not cheap to build AI, but they're giving it us for free on the whole, or have been, and thinking about what that looks like from a costing model and how those costs are going to be be increasing very quickly, because they're not pumping billions in it to give it away to us, and thinking about productivity in that space. That at the minute it's like, well, actually I can run these reports, I can do these things, it doesn't really cost me anything. But now we're talking about large enterprise products that are large and expensive. There is that thing, but actually, you know, it needs a human to drive it. Are there lots of different considerations that are starting to happen in maybe some more sensible conversations? And I guess for me, that was leading to my next question about, so are we focusing too much, you know, on technical skills, being able to build and drive AI? Is there enough out there that we should be much more thinking about adaptability, problem solving, human skills, and how we incorporate it and actually have big strategic, sensible conversations within businesses?
Oh yeah, I'll go for that one. And also, I think to pick up on the last question as well, you know, the people that we are working with that are seeing the most productivity gains are the people who are willing to do the boring work first, right? To understand your data, to understand your processes and your people, is really the communication skills and the strategic skills, the generalist behavioural skills that are the most important. And interestingly, as a training provider, those skills are developed through practice. They're not taught, you know, like, so supported practical learning is the way that this all works. And it isn't, as well, it's not a quick thing, you know, a 12-week program, a 6-session thing in AI for leaders is not going to solve the problems, you know. It's about collecting of people and, you know, going back to the social currency, the bits that are in between, that's the bits that we need to develop to see the productivity.
Cool.
Yeah, I would really echo what Crispin said. I mean, over the period of time that Sheffield Digital has existed, which is 11 plus years, we've been talking to businesses about skills throughout that time, and they've always said, even before AI was on the horizon, they've always said the technology moves too fast for formal education to keep up with. So what we need is people who can self-learn, who can problem solve, who can identify something, break it down into chunks, figure out where to apply, who can work in teams, who can look at the bigger picture, who can think about the user of a service or a piece of software, those sorts of skills. And as Crispin said, you can't learn those on a 6-week boot camp. They need to be built into everything. The other element I would add, and it's quite a strange thing to talk about at a productivity conference, but I think is very relevant when we're talking about AI, is we need to be thinking about ethics, and we need to be encouraging our people as they learn to learn and to interrogate the ethical dimension. When we are using these technologies, are we looking at who we might be excluding? Are we looking at whether these technologies are treating everybody equally? Are we building in bias? Are we thinking about what could the potential impact of this be before we just rush ahead and do it? And I'm very pleased to say I was talking to a senior lecturer at the University of Sheffield, and in their computer science degree courses, they have revamped the curriculum so that their students are working with real-life case studies and are always looking at the ethical element. And she said to begin with, they roll their eyes and they go, why are we doing this? This isn't coding and this isn't sexy and all that kind of thing. But after a couple of goes through, they start to realize, actually, yes, this is really, really important. And they start to bring that to all of their learning. And when they go out in internships to companies, they bring that with them. So I'm encouraged by that, but I think businesses also need to be thinking about that dimension as well.
Can I mention the dreaded hallucinations? We haven't talked about that at all. And we're seeing horrific cases still at the moment, and I think will continue for some time. You've got the case of the West Midlands Police with the West Ham football club that they stopped the... Does everybody remember that case where the West Midlands said it wasn't safe to go ahead, and they based their decision on a completely fabricated case of a football match somewhere that didn't exist? And you've got in the States, you've got judges now are fining the largest law firms for presenting their evidence with hallucinatory cases to back up support. So I think what we're needing, and coming back to, you're needing some experienced heads, and I think we're going to need that for some time, to be looking at and going, this doesn't look right, lad, lass, whatever. And actually, can we just go back and check some of these facts? We're just taking everything as evidence at the moment too quickly.
Malcolm.
I was really glad that Charlie in her talk talked about their word prediction models, and the reasoning is a kind of emergent quality of that, but we have to remember that. So it's amazing what they can do, but it's also amazing what they can get wrong, some of the examples you've just said. And I think that is where, at the moment, and things go so fast, I've no idea what it'll be at the end of the year, let alone next year or the year after. But at the moment, I think the best combination is a domain expert powered by the technology, and then you get a really excellent combination. But frequently you have to guide it, inform it, make sure it's on the right channels, and that's a really important thing of it. And it means that when you set up an agent, you have to give it really quite restricted. You have to teach it properly how to do it, and you have to give it quite restrictive capabilities to do it. So you can engineer that in. So don't be afraid of those things, but definitely know about them, because you need not to make basic errors that it can just make things up. The way we look at it at the moment, the way we want to see it is, because of the greater opportunities it gives you, then by using AI, we can get people to be much more productive. There is a kind of, that's the carrot. I think there is a stick coming behind it to say, CFOs everywhere will be saying, actually, I can just reduce numbers through this. So that is definitely down the line. I think there's always the opportunity of what you can do with it to generate more value first, though. And I think the more you focus on that and enable that, then the less, hopefully, the kind of negative side of it will come in afterwards.
And Robbie, you wanted to?
Yeah, and actually, just as a segue from that comment, that in the States, every radiologist will use AI to interpret scans. But actually, what we've seen over the last 5 years is an increase in the number of radiologists, and that's because the interpretation of that data, the human-centered sort of activity, the communication with families and with patients, but actually also there's an increased demand for those scans as well. So actually, it's not always easy to predict the impact in terms of employment. I was also going to say that I'm enormously reassured by lots of the comments from the panellists. My daughter's about to study English at university, and like lots of parents worried about the family inheriting 50, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 pounds worth of debt. I think that focus on creativity is really to be welcomed. And I just wanted to share one observation that I found from some of the sort of travels around universities in the country is that some courses are starting to think about coursework, AI on, AI partly on, and AI not on at all, and actually preparing our young people to be able to use AI ethically and safely, but within really structured parameters, is a good way of preparing people for the field of work.
I'm going to go to you, Crispin, because I want to talk about training and employers and training. And we talked a little bit about it, but the world is changing, technology is evolving. You're a training provider, you're somebody who's out there in the middle of it all. What do you think that employers should be doing in this space? What
do I think employers should be doing?
Yeah, employers, yeah.
Well, I'd go back to the original thing of like, you want to be doing the boring work, I think, to be preparing to get gains from AI. In terms of training, the AI apprenticeship is great as a 12-month thing. Like I said before, it's a long game to install these things properly, and the training takes practice, and you want people to practice stuff in a supported environment. So apprenticeships are great for that. There is a lot of free training available, and that is not bad to do, but the learning of the technical skills is not difficult. The barriers for progression for especially small businesses used to be unaffordable, because to learn or to have a new software system that you would need to pay for and learn, or adapt a new piece of software were kind of out of reach, whereas now the cost of that has come down to almost zero, but you still got to have the investment cost of training people to be able to get the results out of it that you need.
I'm hugely enthusiastic about AI, as you might gather, but I think in recruitment, we've got a problem at the moment. And one of the biggest issues is that AI, I'm sure everybody in this room knows, it learns from the past. It's not creative, and it's not intelligent. And what's happening is you're getting AI built on conscious or unconscious bias in organizations. And what we're seeing is that there's some cases in the States, I think we're going to get them in this country, what you're getting is that the unconscious bias that particularly we've spent so much time trying to get gender equality and all the rest of it, not prejudicing against disability. AI looks at the people that you have recruited over whatever and goes, oh, you don't really like women that much, you don't like disability, you don't like ethnicity, and they build that in subconsciously, if that's the right word, into the system. So I think leaders have got to look into their AI and what is it making decisions on. And what we're seeing at the moment is massively the 50-plus generation is not being recruited by employers. So I think there are some issues there to be looked at. I think it could be a great benefit. People are disheartened with the lack of responses they get, and actually personalization back to it. It could be fantastic to give people feedback as to why they didn't succeed and what they could do to improve for another time.
Yeah, and I do think if you take it right to the very top as well, there are a lot of people who are very similar, who are mostly male and very similar building it. So maybe they're not even noticing when they're building it that they're building the bias because they live that bias. But there you go, Crispin.
Yeah, so jump in on that one. I think that's a really good example of understanding the process and what AI is for. So AI is not there to make those decisions because, as you put out, there was a thing, wasn't there? I think it was Amazon who did a recruitment process and they filtered all the results, and the AI was basically prioritizing or preferring white guys called John, because most of the people who were in that job were white guys called John, right? So that is the thing that we want to avoid. Now, coming back to the process thing, if you understand that process and where the efficiency is, the tacit and implicit knowledge that exists in that recruitment process is in people's heads. So you want to use the AI to do the boring, repetitive bit, not the decision bit. So to have a recruitment process where you can filter people out very quickly for not being eligible for something, or living in a different country where it's not a remote position. All of those sorts of things you can do quicker, and then present that stuff to people to make a people decision.
Yeah, so maybe more like you're asking questions around the company's values, and can you pull out how people have expressed our values within there, rather than. Yeah.
I said, one of the questions that we ask every applicant is, tell us how you used AI in this application, and that's fine, right? We're not saying we don't want a handwritten letter with a quill. We exist in a world where this technology exists too. We're expecting people to use AI in their job applications, but they should be ready to defend that position. Oh, this is what I did. I refined my answer based on this, not like I just put it to ChatGPT and forgot to. We had an application where they forgot to. They did a thing about how they really like football, and then they put in, and then it said insert football team name here in square brackets in their application.
We went through a recruitment process, and actually 2 of the applicants had exactly the same first line in their application form, which was such a shame for them. They might have been talented, but immediately on the rejection pile. What we're also seeing is an increase in the number of applications. Now, that might also be the job market, but we do know a large number of people are using AI to be more efficient at applying for jobs. And I guess coming back to some of the things we were talking about or heard about earlier today in terms of unemployment and people who are sort of dissuaded from even looking for work, I guess I do worry slightly about whether the opportunity for people to sort of accidentally find a job might become a bit harder in the future if there's huge volumes of applicants who are all, relatively well qualified, and actually AI can help us sift through the best applicant, but actually sometimes serendipity can be good for individuals, but also businesses.
Yeah, there was a period of time where I was actually quite passionate, but worked in technology, but was quite interested and passionate about working in the public sector. But whenever I would look at a job application, I would think, oh my God, I don't have a whole week to apply for this job. And it's big and it's complicated, and actually never made that move. And I think I could have added a lot of value. I came from the private sector, I'd worked in a really fast, agile tech environment, but the process put me off, and actually now, if I saw something, I might think, well, actually I could incorporate AI into this, and it can help me pull those documents together, and then I'll refine them, and then I'll put together a really good application within a reasonable time span that isn't going to take a week of my time, because I don't have that.
I was going to say, Victoria made some very good points about it, but I would say that is lazy and not good implementation. And if you're going to implement AI in that way, you'll get bad outcomes. Yeah. So all those businesses you saw in the earlier stats about we're not seeing the benefits of AI, if you put in that sort of process, you won't. You need to do it properly. And actually, in terms of if you set it up in the right way, it can be a fantastic equal opportunities tool so that you don't take any of those biases in it because you set it up to work in the right way. It's not doing that implicitly. Interestingly, I did also see a study recently to say that the initial people that use the AI development application processes, they are actually predisposed to like the generated responses. So actually, if you use ChatGPT, you're more likely to get through the automated bit of a process because it likes its own text.
Andy talked about this might be the chance for the North. And actually, you know, we are a region, we have been held behind. You know, is there something here around an economic advantage for us as a region? Are there things that bring us forward? You know, how can we think about local policymakers, employers? What is it about us that might give us those sort of advantages? I don't know if anybody wants to.
Yeah, I'm happy. So in the Northeast, I spend a lot of my time sort of thinking and worrying about that type of question and identifying those areas where we do have a comparative advantage. And also, you know, like Andy shared it with us earlier, I do share that optimism really in terms of the potential across the whole of the North and in the Northeast. You know, for example, massive opportunities around clean energy generation, and actually if we can bring together that energy generation with energy usage, and that energy usage might be in big manufacturing plants. We produce a third, or Nissan produce a third of all the cars in the UK, huge consumer of vehicles, of energy. And if we can utilise that comparative advantage around energy generation, I think that's a great advantage to the Northeast, but actually that does apply across the North as a whole.
Cool.
There's an unusual fact I came across a year or so ago that apparently there are more chief execs living in Harrogate, chief execs of FTSEs living in Harrogate than anywhere else in the country. And I still think there's got to be some kind of benefit that we can tap into. I know they live in Harrogate to get away from the work, but I'm determined that they should be mentors, they should be helping. We ought to tap into that for the North to somehow use it as a strategic advantage, I think.
So one of the things that Andy mentioned in his talk was the number of people who are economically inactive due to health issues. And the potential for AI applications in health is massive. And we already have in South Yorkshire, I'm waving my South Yorkshire flag now, a growing and thriving health tech cluster. We've got the AWRC, where there's a lot of work being done in terms of rehabilitation and movement and that kind of thing. We've got the Child Health Technology Centre, all these sorts of exciting things, physically co-located out on you know, the Don Valley bit of Sheffield. So if the public sector is brave enough to think very long term, which we must do, then you could look at, okay, we have this ability here in South Yorkshire to focus on health. We have the technology experts, absolutely in the area, to be able to apply their tech and AI savvy to health. We can bring all that together. We've got the general public, we've got patients and people that we can bring in to be part of the creation process, and we can come up with things that will enable more people to live healthier lives and therefore be more productive. So it's a long game, but if you're looking at real lasting advantage, it wouldn't hurt to start there.
Good.
And one thing I'd really like to add to that, I think we have to appreciate that AI technology is hugely democratizing. It enables you to do incredible things that you'd never have had a chance of doing 12 months ago. I mean, I think there was a good example of, I think the first AI film got produced recently. And I think it was a few £1,000s of processing cost. Whereas a filmmaker, and it was involving aircrafts flying across the Middle East and things, all sorts of stuff. There's no way anyone could have made that film for anything like that sort of budget. So the things you can do now, the brakes are off. You can really do almost anything. You can develop your own app. You don't need the technical team to do that. You can do that yourself. Because actually, if you can unlock people's creativity, what they can achieve now by using the technology is way beyond what they could have done even 2 years ago. It's just completely different.
And Crispin?
I think my bit is, going back to what Andy was saying about the devolved powers in the North, I think that's absolutely critical because the problems there are similar problems and there are similar barriers and there are similar solutions that need to be communicated across regions, but having the power and the money to do experiments that are regional, locally specific, I think is really, really important. I did a consultation thing with the UN last year about social mobility in the UK, and they're picking specific cities to look at. And the most, I think one of the most interesting things to come out of that report is how different it is in Exeter and Leeds, and what the different barriers are and the different priorities and everything. So having that local power to make those decisions, I think, is absolutely critical.
Hiya, I'm Aileen McLaughlin from Active Humber. I had a question. It's for the upcoming workforce, and particularly young people, but also our existing workforce. What are your thoughts on people losing core skills? And there has been some discussion around de-skilling when we use more technology. About the engagement and knowledge in order to apply the ethical principles and apply that critical thinking that we need for the human-in-the-loop action. Now and more we're seeing people are outsourcing their learning, whether that be small tasks or more complex tasks. And I'm concerned about the skill development that people might have. All of us in the room have lived before AI and worked before AI, but I'm thinking about if you have any ideas how we keep people engaged to really learn and think about what they're doing so that they're able to use these technologies in ethical ways, and not just thinking about optimization, which of course has huge opportunities, but for the content itself as well.
Okay, Victoria.
I am worried, I think, about younger people not losing skills, but not developing the skills is the issue. I was asked to be a judge on an innovation award recently, and a law firm had put in what they thought was a stunning award. 120 of their interns, you don't call them article clerk, they're trainee solicitors. They each were given an AI project in the first 6 months. And I thought that's ridiculous. They can use AI and all the rest. The skills they actually need to develop are the people and the relationship skills. And I think law firms and accountancy firms and the other professions are all worried that they're not recruiting at the bottom to get the partners that they need. We still need those senior experienced skills at the top. And what I think is going to I believe they should be looking at is seconding the recruits into places like charities to go and get some really nitty-gritty problems. You know, charities are struggling for money at the moment. You put a youngster in there, part of their training, to go and see how do we, just problem solving, how do we keep going, making relationships with their funders and all the rest of it. I think those sorts of skills are going to be far more use. And I think we have to think really cleverly about how do we keep developing those people and relationship skills and not focus them on learning about AI. Yes, of course, we need to include that, but those are the easy ones. The others are harder to develop, I think.
I think there's a point about kind of making sure you need to educate people to use it so that they keep their agency, they keep what they're actually doing and their input into the process. Because if over-reliance on AI is definitely a danger, because it's plausible but not right. And I think if you don't do that, but then again, whilst you could say a lot of tasks are being automated, there's also an opportunity because they're fantastic training tools. I don't know if anyone else has done it, but I used to use Duolingo to learn a language. And now I just do that with the language models because I can tell it how I want to learn, tell it how I want you to do the examples in this way, and it will do it perfectly well. So you don't need that. So they're actually an incredible tool for learning in themselves if you use them in the right way. But you need to have your agency to say, this is what I want you to do, this is how I want you to do it, and you can do it this way for me and control it.
Some parts of the public sector are adapting to AI really fast and well, and other parts perhaps less so. One of the things we're trying to do in the combined authority is to sort of introduce learning alongside the work. So sort of rather than separating out learning and work in a sort of traditional fashion, but actually trying to help people sort of learn and adopt AI through their everyday sort of course. I think also what we're experiencing, we're a growing organisation, and we need to get more people back in the office more often. I think it's that interaction between people. And what we notice is that there's probably 5%, maybe 10% of the workforce that aren't in the office very often, and they're the people we worry about.
Developing core skills, that was one of the problems that got me into this in the first place, is that people were coming out of education lacking the core skills that I needed them to do to be able to build computer programs. So those core skills are learned, again, through practice, and they are developed across careers. So when people get to the end of their careers, they're super good at those things. So I don't think that has changed, and I think it's something that, you know, I was on panels a decade ago talking about the same thing. So here we still are. Maybe that's just a problem that we will just continue to have. I think a different thing though, I think, and quite an exciting point that where we are at now is a thing that we have to recognise is that the operating model for business has changed, and we are coping with that change now. So to think about it as how do we apply this thing to the way we have always worked is asking the wrong question. The thing is, we need to now understand how do we move forward as a society with this technology that is now embedded in everything that we do, socially, politically, economically, everything.
Okay, Mel, do you want to add?
Just very quickly, one thing we haven't spoken about on this panel is the people who are doing the teaching, who do incredibly difficult jobs already. And it would be appropriate, I think, to consider how do we support the teachers to work with their students, with their pupils in this changing world, to still focus on those core skills that our questioner was raising, to still focus on that sense of engagement and that sense of creativity and being engaged with someone. I don't have a silver bullet answer to that one. I think part of it might be that if we can have more of the skills, responsibilities devolved locally, then we can do more to support locally rather than trying to work within national frameworks.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm from Sheffield Women in Tech. Just wanted to ask about one point that relates to training indirectly, which is mentoring. So a lot of times we do talk about skills and we talk about all those productivity elements, but what about mentoring? I personally found it quite hard to find good mentors or just mentors, period. And kind of how do we implement that in the frameworks we're sort of talking about today? Thank you.
We are flooded out with people who have, inverted commas, retired. They don't want to be retired. They're looking for things to do. And we have got a real problem in society because they're going to, without that sense of purpose and a reason to get up in the morning, is what we say, they're going to age too quickly. They're going to be a huge drain on society instead of being net contributors. So I am passionate about using that generation. Yeah, they've got rubbish tech skills often, but let's pair them up generationally. There's nothing, we've gone through massive tech changes across. I won't even begin to tell you what I used to work on when I first came into work. You know, we've done it. We've done all the tech changes. They're perfectly capable. We just need to help them through that. And that would be a great way of doing it, intergenerationally, matching up.
Hi Nancy, it's good to see you here. Sheffield Digital runs a voluntary mentoring scheme where we pair people working in the industry who put themselves forward as volunteers with people who have come to us and said that they're looking for a mentor. That's a small scale thing, but it is one of the most effective and most popular things that we do. With a little bit of support, we're very easy to expand that. There are similar schemes in working at various levels across South Yorkshire. There's the Northern Gritstone has its own mentoring scheme. There are probably loads that I don't even know about. Wouldn't it be great if there was one central point where you could identify what are the mentoring schemes that are available to me and how do I access them and how do I find the one that's right for me? I think that's a role for the public sector, to provide that central focal point for all the private sector people who are doing stuff to feed in order to make things more discoverable generally. It's a lot to ask the private sector to do all of that as well as all the voluntary stuff they're already doing.
I guess it's whether it's a job for the public sector or an 18-year-old. And by that I'm thinking that it feels like there's a mismatch problem, because I also believe, Nancy, that there's organisations, businesses that benefit from mentors, but also other people who might be willing to be persuaded to be mentees. And actually, if we can get that matching process more effective, and actually, I would be looking potentially to public sector, but I'd be looking for a technology solution as well.
No,
AI.
I'm going to jump in on
Yeah.
that. One of the reasons our scheme is successful is because we have a trained coach who does the connecting and does the supporting. I think AI has a long way to go before it can do that. And that's a case where you might jump in and go, the technology can solve this, and not get the result you're looking for. So yes, in the future, wouldn't it be great if technology can do it? Right now, if mentoring is a way that we can upskill people faster, get them into new careers, then let's invest a little bit in the human capital to make those sorts of things work.
So I spend a lot of time around wheelchair basketball teams because my daughter's a wheelchair basketball player and a wheelchair user. And what I see from the young people on those teams is a huge set of people that have to overcome challenges just to get there or to live their daily life or to get to education. The people that I meet through that are some of the people that are least well served by society, yet have some of the best problem-solving skills that I've ever seen in a group of young people. And I'm just wondering, when we're talking about productivity here, this is a group of people coming through their education, facing healthcare problems that are not being served well, and yet have the capability to be some of the most productive people in society. And on top of that, I was talking to somebody who has done consultancy work with a Spanish group of hotels, where they directly correlated the success and the profitability of that hotel chain with the fact that their staff have a really high level of disability. And I'm just wondering how any of you see that playing out with AI and how we can improve our productivity, but stop seeing disabled people as economically inactive, but actually underserved by the very stuff that we're building here.
The goal that we're after, I guess, like socially with adopting AI is that we are giving ourselves more time to solve problems. So if we get this work done and we become more productive, that gives us more time. So it's cool that there's an AI film, right? But someone thought of what that film would be, right? Someone had the time to do that because of AI, like, so we've got the ability, to make good on this by doing the things that we're doing today. It's about communicating and discussing and coming up with things together as people.
I'm by no means an expert in this, and I do not want to sound glib at all, but I'm reading a lot about how AI as an assistive technology for people who, whatever reason, whatever kind of disability, it can open up doors for them. I don't have any specific examples. I can't say, this is happening here. But I do think if we think about one of the areas where AI could be transformative, I have a hope that being an assistive technology for people who've got additional challenges in engaging with the world and engaging with work, there must be potential there. What it needs is people to make that their focus. So when we look at Innovate UK grants and that kind of thing, let's ask why aren't there more that are looking at, we're looking for innovative solutions of how technologies can work with people who are disadvantaged for various reasons. So it's all these moving parts of the jigsaw, if that's mixing my metaphors. How do we link those together again, to bring the investment where it's needed to unlock the potential of the technology for a disadvantaged group?
Sorry, it's not quite answering the question, but it's around mental health. So we know that's such an enormous challenge. And we know that there are a plethora of sort of mental health apps out there that, where actually there's probably very little evidence that they're making a tangible difference. But what we're also seeing is some of the most progressive health trusts and experts within the field thinking about how can they blend together technology with psychologists and other experts to sort of blend together the best of experience and knowledge, but also using technology to help sort of personalised journeys for individuals.
I think a lot of our mental health problems at the moment are to do with, we have got shocking management going on. I don't know if anybody's seen the latest Gallup survey. 18% of the workforce is engaged in this country. Just 18%. So you've got 82 or whatever % of people are not engaged. That has got to have an impact on your mental health. We've also got these, I know that various people, is it Charlie Mayfield, is looking at how do we get these older people back to work. They'd like nothing more than And I think some of their, not some, I think huge amounts of mental health problems there. So I'm wondering whether AI can't help in some way to the thing I was going to say, let me just say that's why I'm hesitating and messing up here. I've had a chronic illness. I never normally talk about this since I was 19, and it's not been an easy ride. And people are kind of a bit stunned when they know what it is and all the rest, because I've got a very positive mental attitude. And my doctors sort of say, I wish we could kind of replicate this because it would help people to get better and to cope with what they've got better. I think there's something here with AI to help people learn to be positive with what they've got and look for the advantages. You know, there are lots of advantages to having had what I've had. And, you know, you've got to look for those and be positive. And I think that would help people to sort of make the most of their lives rather than sitting there thinking, I've got a rubbish hand that I've been played. And that's not to do down anybody. It can be hard, and people have not necessarily got support at home or employers. I didn't mean to talk about that, sorry, but anyway, that's what I have said.
No, thank you. And I think, you know, the more representation, the better. If you're seeing people like yourselves, if they're being represented when they're building healthcare apps and considered, then actually more and more things will happen in that space. But if people aren't represented in the room, as we talked about AI and bias, then it makes it harder and harder for them to be seen and heard. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'd like you to give us a big round of applause for this panel. I thought they were fantastic.